we are. I'd like to call the March 19th meeting of the Pitt County Planning Board to order. Would like to welcome everybody that's in the audience and those in TV land and a special guest, Mr. Colson. At this time, we'll ask Tabitha if she'll do the roll call.
Jacob Cox, Lyman Hardy,
Here.
Wanda Harrington, Thomas Harris,
Here.
Aaron Hines,
Here.
Clay Malloy,
Here.
Matt Nobles,
Here.
Johnny Penner,
Here.
Kenneth Rouse,
Here.
William Wooten.
Here.
And Mr. Chairman, we received notice that Frank Bradham will not be present tonight.
Thank you, Tabitha. At this time, we'll ask Mr. Ross if he would open us with a word of prayer, and then Thomas will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray our heads. Our gracious Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for another day. Ask that you bless each person here. Ask that you also guide and direct us as we go about the business of the planning board, that we will do what's best for the county and the citizens of this community. All these blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody was mailed the minutes of the last meeting. Is there any correction, or do we hear a motion we accept them? as
Move to
written?
approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same. Okay, first agenda, rezoning, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. We have two requests tonight, and since they're so close to each other and related, I figured I'd show you where they are in relation to each other on a single map. The first one I'm going to talk about is shaded in yellow. And this is a request by Judson Whitehurst to rezone 204.69 acres located on US 264 East and Sticks Road. Parcel numbers 24561, 57136, and 57137 from general industrial to rural agricultural. This is a view towards the subject property from 264. This is a view across 264 from the property. This is the view looking west back towards Greenville along 264 and looking east on 264. This is a view of the subject property from Sticks Road. You can see the only structure that's located on the property is a single-family residence. This is the view across Sticks Road from the subject property. This is the view looking north on Sticks Road towards the intersection of 264 and Sticks Road, and looking south along Sticks Road. It's a view of Poor Man's Flea Market. That's located at the intersection of Sticks Road and 264, and additional commercial that's north of the subject property on 264. So our future land use map from our comprehensive land use plan. It shows the subject property as rural residential, agricultural. It's bordered to the west by heavy commercial and industrial, and to the east by rural residential and agricultural. There's agricultural open space and natural resource areas to the south. Just a little bit of history. The property was initially zoned general industrial due to a request by EJE during the original county zoning in 2003. And their desire was to ensure adequate general industrial land use for future expansion. The rural residential agricultural designation is intended to include low-density residential, single-family site-built and manufactured homes, agricultural, forestry, churches, limited commercial, office or public institutional uses meeting locational criteria. And the criteria for non-residential uses would include frontage and access to a major state highway or secondary road, location at a major intersection, proximity to similar uses, and spatial separation from non-compatible uses. And land uses within this category will be expected to develop without public sewer. It's an existing land use map. It shows what land is currently being used for. You can see the subject property is largely undeveloped with the exception of that single-family residence. To the west, it's bordered by EJE recycling. That's industrial use. There's some commercial to the north, as well as commercial interspersed along 264, and residential spread out along 264 and Sticks Road as well. The current zoning map is shown here. It shows the subject property is currently general industrial, also bordered by general industrial to the west, and some commercial to the north, but for the most part bordered by rural agricultural. And that is what is being requested the property be rezoned to, and that district is intended to accommodate very low density residential uses as well as their associated public and institutional uses, low intensity commercial uses, and agricultural related industrial uses, which are interspersed throughout areas that are principally characterized as rural in nature. Given the subject property's current use and its proximity to other similarly zoned property, as well as having existing residents located on the property, the request is in general conformance with the land use plan, and the site, which includes an existing residence, meets guidelines for rural agricultural in the Pitt County zoning ordinance. So staff recommends approval of the request by Justin Whitehurst to rezone 204.69 acres on 264 East and Sticks Road. Parcel numbers 24561, 57136, and 57137 from general industrial to rural agricultural. And we advise that the request is reasonable and within the public interest and is consistent with the Pitt County Comprehensive Land Use Plan and other applicable plans. Public comments can now be entertained by the planning board, and the planning board will then make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and the commissioners are scheduled to hold a public hearing regarding this request on April 21st of this year. At that time, they will take action on the request.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, we'll open up the floor for public comment. I have two people that have signed up to speak. James Berger, and Lawrence Davenport. If you would come forward, state your name, and we are limited to 3 minutes per.
I am Lawrence Davenport. I'm adjoining landowner on the south side, I think, by forestry. And my understanding, and just saying, this is going for housing? So you're going to put it back in farming? And it's not going for the recycling part?
Yeah, the other end of it is, right?
Right, we're on the east side now. We're on Sticks
We're on
Road side.
Sticks Road side now.
I understand that.
Yeah,
There's two separate requests.
Huh?
There's two separate requests.
Yes, I understand that, but I thought the request was both to do the same thing.
No, they're separate.
The one that we're talking about now is going to be
Turn back over to agriculture.
and not put in the recycling part.
That's correct.
Okay, I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Lawrence.
My name is James Burgess. I was the site surveyor, and I'm here just really to answer any questions you might have for EJ in the rezoning process. If you got any concerns, I'd like to try to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Burgess?
So this is going back into farmland?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else out there like to speak on this? Okay, this time we'll close the floor for public comment. We'll bring it back to the board for comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request, since it's been recommended by the staff, and there's no opposition up here against this being put back in the farmland.
Second. We got a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. Those the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, Eric is the next rezoning.
Okay. The second request tonight is also Judson Whitehurst, as Mark had alluded to. This is a continuation of the first request. The first one was a downzoning from general industrial to rural agricultural. This one is essentially an upzoning from rural agricultural to general industrial. The property itself is approximately 190 acres. It's located on parcel numbers 08633 and 79231, and both of those are partial zonings of those properties, and I'll explain that in a second. This is the subject property, see highlighted in yellow. This is to the west of the property that the board just heard. The property is currently RA and looking to go up to general industrial to sort of match the existing zoning that's in the area. This is the entrance to the EJE Recycling Center off of 264. Again, another entrance. This is looking back towards the west on 264 as you're heading back towards Greenville. Some adjacent heavy commercial uses on the other side of 264 from this property. Another view of the property itself. This is another commercially zoned property that's in the vicinity. This is the former Midway Grill, if you're familiar with this area. You see the land use plan. The property is designated as heavy commercial industrial. You see the area that's up for rezoning is highlighted in the black outline. The board may also recall this was approved by the Board of County Commissioners in November to designate this property as heavy commercial agricultural. It was previously rural residential agricultural, and EJA had requested to amend the land use plan specifically for the purposes of bringing this rezoning to the board to go to that heavy commercial industrial. That designation is intended to include heavy commercial industrial uses, wholesale, office, and public institutional uses, and surrounding residential uses should be spatially separated from high-intensity commercial and industrial uses where noise, odors, or other negative effects could be expected. You see the existing land use. The gray on the screen is the existing industrial for the EJE Recycling Center. There is already some industrial that's occurring on this property. There's bits of a sand mine and some other stockpiling that's going on out there. But for the most part, the rest of the property is agricultural. And you see there's some very limited residential uses around it, primarily up along 264 and some off of Styx Road. But for the most part, again, primarily the surrounding uses are industrial and agricultural. The current zoning maps, you see it is RA currently. The EJE site, currently the general industrial extends from 264. There's a little dog leg that you see that comes back towards the west and circles up back to 264. Some existing general commercial, primarily at the intersections of Shepherd Mill Road and Styx Road. Styx Road's being the poor man's flea market. And then the area towards the east of this property is what you just heard, which they're proposing to downzone to the rural agricultural. So essentially what you're looking at is almost a swap. Very comparable areas in size of industrially zoned property in RA. So essentially asking to change one to RA and essentially swap that for the other towards the western side. General Industrial District is intended to accommodate a wide range of manufacturing, warehousing, wholesale, and related commercial and service uses in areas that have access to major thoroughfares and necessary utilities to support such development. Given the subject property's current use and its proximity to other similarly zoned property, as well as its proximity to a major highway, we do find the request is in general conformance with the land use plan, and the site meets the guidelines for the general industrial district in the zoning ordinance. Staff does recommend approval of the request to rezone approximately 190 acres located on 264 East from rural agricultural to general industrial. And staff advises the request is reasonable and within the public interest and is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and other applicable plans. This time we'd like to entertain public comments. The board will then make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and commissioners are also scheduled to hold a public hearing for this request on April 21st, so both will be heard the same night, and the Board of County Commissioners will then take action on the request. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to open up for public comments.
All right, at this time, we'll open up the floor for public comment. We have the same two gentlemen signed up to speak this time as they did before. Lawrence?
This one is a little bit different in that, again, we border Judson on the south side. And my understanding is that this rezoning request to general commercial industrial, they want the rezoning to be done, but they're not planning on using it for industrial use for a number of years. Now, that could be 10, 20, I don't know, but whatever but the site would be used for the same purposes that they're using the site that they have now in recycling and waste dump, so to speak. Our problem with that is we've not had any problems with what they have been doing, but our problem is why go ahead and rezone it 20 years ahead of time for what we don't know is going to be used for. There's not the plan is to be used for the same thing they're using it for. We don't know what the effect of the site that they're using now is going to have on us in years to come. It may be that we won't have an objection to it in those years to come. But to just have it rezoned in case they decide to use it or planning to use it in the future, we think we'd rather see it wait and have them come and ask for a rezoning when they get ready to use it for whatever it is they're going to use it for at that time. Now, Justin and I won't be here at that time probably, but our children, grandchildren, he wants to get it done so that his folks will already have it done. I'm saying let's wait and see what it is they want to do at the time they decide to do it and then rezone it. My real concern, since we're on the time limit, my real concern is that somewhere down the road they might sell that business. It's a good business, and they might sell it to somebody out of New York who's in the waste management business all over the nation, and they come in and do things, and we can't deal with them like we deal with Judson. So our concern and our request would be that we put it off until they decide what they're going to do with it in the future and rezone it at that time to exactly whatever it is they decide they want to rezone it for. And if we object, we will, probably won't. But. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Lawrence before he sits down? Thank you, Lawrence. James, you want to?
James Burgess, here just to answer any questions or concerns you might have. And I guess to address a little bit of what Mr. Davenport said, we're not exactly sure of a timeline, but this would be one of the first steps you would do in order to use it. It takes years to get everything approved and studies done. You'll have several different professionals come in and do, you'll have groundwater studies, you'll have geology stuff done, you'll have surveying, design. All that stuff will be approved in Raleigh. It's not something that happens quick, and it's not something I would think that we would start and spend any money on until we knew what we were going to be working on was something that was going to be available. And that's really, where we're at right now. Any other questions?
Doesn't clear any other entrances to the property, does it?
Pardon?
Are there any other entrances created with this?
Entrances?
Yeah.
No.
So it's just adjoining,
Right now.
using the same entrance?
Right now, that's it.
So then it is my understanding that y'all, once it is rezoned, you will start the process of
It will have to
getting
happen.
permits
It would.
and doing other studies and whatnot.
I wouldn't guarantee you that, but I mean, that makes sense that we would go ahead and start initiating some of those things to be done. Yeah.
I'd like to address that or answer that if I could, please.
Sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Judson Whitehurst. I own EJE Recycling, and I appreciate your time on looking at this. Here's our thought process. This is Regulation Nation. I'm thinking that I've got to, how long did it take us to do this?
It's been over a year.
So if I wait 20 years now, or my children wait for 20 years now, it's gonna cost them 3 times as much, and it's gonna take 3 times the length of time to do it. Our plans are right now, it would be 30 years before this piece of property is ever touched if we grew our landfill or our recycling. It would be a minimum of 30 years before we reach those sales. And what I'm trying to do, just like Lawrence, I'm trying to look out for my children's future and my grandchildren's future, where they won't have to go through this kind of stuff. Our plans are not to do anything for this property, no more than farm it like we've been doing. And the only thing I can do is try to find some comfort for you guys that I'm a man of my word. That's not what I'm about. I'm trying to protect the future up here. Because this thing, I think all of you agree, prices are going up, and the more regulations we get, the tougher it's gonna be. Yes, sir.
What was your reasoning behind, I guess, flip-flopping the two? Was there any particular?
No, we got to looking at it, and then we met with James and them, and James said, well, man, you got this over here, it's industrial. Why is it industrial? I had no clue. Had no idea it was industrial. Then we got to looking at it and said, well, it makes sense to flip the farming back on that end, keep the industrial on this end of the property. Because it's well suited, and there's already infrastructure in there for that. And there's 2 sand pits on the property. Most of them, for lack of a better term, I'll say on Lawrence's end, where we're mining sand back for our services.
So this industrial is connected to what you're doing right now, where the recycling is?
Yes, sir, sure is.
Okay. Well,
All
how
that
is that,
property's connected.
what is this, spatial, how is it separated from, say, the Davenport Farm
There's
area?
a creek in bottomland, and it backs up. I don't know what the buffer would be in there.
Anywhere.
Tip could probably answer that better than I could.
I looked at the, where our boundary is, roughly from where our boundary line actually is. I mean, we'll have a buffer when we do something on the inside of that, but it's anywhere from 600 to 1,500 feet before you get out of the floodplain into what would be, something that you could do with the land, with their land. So 600 to 1,500 feet, there's a good buffer zone exactly in there.
And we'd be another 200 to 300 feet off of that because of our buffer rules.
Hey, anybody else have any questions for Mr. Whiteoak?
Just to make a comment, if it's gonna be 30 years, why the push to get it done now?
Well, that's just what I was saying.
I know what you said, but,
Yeah.
I can't see where.
It just makes sense to me that I need to handle it now for the future instead of waiting, because I know what's gonna happen. I know what they're gonna do in Raleigh.
Can I make another comment?
Yes, sir.
I'm not worried about what Justin's gonna do. We've been friends all our life, and we're gonna be friends when this is over. My concern, if he decides to do something, he's gonna come talk to me about it. We're gonna decide whether it works for both of us or not. My concern 25 years from now is that if his children were to decide to sell to a company from way out of this state that could care less about Pactolus, North Carolina, that we would have real problems on our hand. And I'll give you a good analogy of that. My granddaddy gave his neighbor a right-of-way to go through his property to get some timber out because there's no other way to go. The neighbor recorded that. 3 owners later, International Paper owned it. We had cleared that particular property and were farming it. They came in one day with great big trucks and everything and started making this highway right down through the field. And I went and said, what in the world are you doing? They said, we got a right-of-way. We're going in here and thin this timber. And I said, well, whoa. I said, that's going to mess my field up, really going to mess it up. How about if we just, I want you to go in there, but just let's go around this way, because it's changed in the last 15 years. He said, my paper says I can go this way. That's the way I'm going. I don't care about your field. And they put that road through there. And it cost me a lot of money to get rid of that right-of-way agreement. So it's not about the investment. It's about the fact that I worry about things that might change between now and 20 years from now that we don't know about. We don't know what to do. And he's worried
That's
about
the
that.
same worry I had.
He's worried about that because he's worried they might not let him do it in 20 years. And I'm worried that they might. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I'll end with this, guys. We've been there 12 years, 11 or 12 years. We've been good neighbors to everybody, and we handle our business, and we got a great relationship with Pitt County. We hold quite a few jobs and put back quite a few taxes over the years to the county. I don't think what I'm asking is that much out of hand, and I don't have the vision to tell you what's gonna go on 20, 30 years now. This is the best shot I have. And I certainly appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. At this time, I'll close the floor for public comment and bring it to the board for comments before we make our vote. Anybody? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion
And a second.
To approve.
to approve. We got a motion to approve and a second. Any other comment? Okay, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. Opposed, the same. Tabitha, you got the count?
5-3.
Got a motion carried?
Yes, sir.
Motion carried, Tabitha.
Yes, sir. The motion carried in the approval, yes, sir.
5-3.
All right,
5-4.
Thank
3
you.
against.
all right. Next on the agenda is Mr. Rhodes with information items.
And just as a follow-up, those two items, this is a recommendation, goes to the commissioners. We'll try to schedule that public hearing for April the 21st, and we'll, again, send out notices to those adjacent property owners and make them aware of that hearing as well. Just a few follow-up items for informational purposes. One of our biggest projects this year, as we discussed in our work program over the last couple of months, is the regional hazard mitigation plan, and this is coming up fairly soon now. We're right in the thick of developing the plan. We, of course, are developing a plan this time over a 5-county area, Pitt County being the lead agency for that. And we had one of our regional meetings today in developing some of these strategies, such as continuation or continuity of operation plans, emergency operation plans. Those are the type of operations we're looking at to make sure if a disaster hits here, we're able to continue functioning in a succinct manner, not just at the governmental level, but in a number of facets around here, healthcare, other things. We currently have 3 sections that have been drafted, and we will meet again as a group here in Pitt County next week, and we hope to have this plan in a good draft form and ready for consideration later this year. So moving right along with that, and of course the reason behind this, if we do not have a plan in place, Pitt County and the local governments within Pitt County will not be eligible for disaster relief funding from the federal government. So again, a very good reason. We need this type of plan anyway, but certainly that's a mighty big stick to get us there. We need to have that federal funding if we're declared a disaster area. Speaking of such, just one example, we did get some funding in for our hazard mitigation buyout program, also known as hazard mitigation grant program. And we had two properties that were actually approved for the buyout. One has been bought out already. This is on Bedard Road. If you're familiar with that particular area, this site has flooded numerous times since Hurricane Floyd, and that house has been purchased and will be taken out over the next month or so, and this will revert back to just open space. Also, just to let you know where we stand with some of our policies for street assessments. You may know we've updated our subdivision ordinance now to require financial guarantees for public streets to keep those maintained appropriately. There are some older streets in the county that are falling into disrepair. This policy was put in place towards the end of last year to allow folks to come in from certain neighborhoods and petition the county for funding to help bring those roads up to state maintenance requirements. In turn, that would be repaid back by those affected property owners. Well, there's a petition that's required from at least 75% of the landowners There were some questions by a lot of the folks as to what the repayment period would be and a few other things. So at the last commissioners meeting, the commissioners did agree to put a little bit more language into the policy and stated that administrative expenses would be included in that assessment, as well as no interest rates would be tacked on to it. And the biggest thing was try to set up some type of system whereby folks would know up front what they could expect as far as an assessment. And this, in simple terms, would be we're attempting not to more than double their annual taxes that are levied on that property every year. So if they're currently paying $600, they shouldn't expect any more than $1,200 to be their total payment in a given year if the assessment goes through. So that's intended just to let folks know what they can expect if they sign the petitions. We currently have 2 neighborhoods that are actively seeking petitions from those landowners, and we'll let you know if those continue forward. Other things in your package, the monthly report for February, and of course, have a lot of good information. If folks are looking at floodplain information, a lot of other different items are available on our website that's shown on the screen here, so we invite folks to visit that if possible. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have for tonight.
Thank you, James. Anything from the board? Got a motion to move to adjourn, a second from Clay. Meeting adjourned.